Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in this future aviation session. Very interesting, very challenging. First, I would like to introduce the speakers in this very interesting session, paving the way for 2050 challenges, a lot, in how to maintain competitiveness of the European industry and at the same time face the ambitious challenge we face at national and international level. I will start with Grazia Vittadini, Airbus Vice President, Chief Technology Officer. Thank you very much for taking part, and I know that you had some difficulties to reach the session on time. Welcome, and thank you. Monsieur Stéphane Cueil, Safran Senior Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer. Welcome also, thank you very much. Monsieur Marco Protti, Leonardo, Head of Advanced Research. Welcome also. The three first speakers are representing industry, the challenge, but also the constraints. And we have four representatives of research and industry sector, research and innovation sector, to support and to help facing the challenge. Without research and innovation, how can we mitigate? Industry is on the operational side. Mr. Philippe Baumier, French Aerospace Lab Onera, Director Aeronautics Civil, welcome. Thank you very much for your contribution. Mr. Kolja Kindler, Head of Aeronautic Program Strategy Unit at the German Aerospace Center, DLR. Thanks also for being there and contributing to this debate. Monsieur Henri Very, Dean of the Aerospace Engineering and Technical University of Delft. Welcome also. And Mr. Miguel Angel Castillo, Head of Research and Development in Aernova in Spain.
Hello.
Thank you very much. The session will last about 1 hour. We'll try to keep the timing. Therefore, I will check perhaps the time of each speaker. And I have two parts of this session. The first will be more devoted to industry players. The second more focusing on research and innovation. Question will be given afterwards, possibility for question to the floor. We are web stream at the same time. We might get also question from the web. And depending of the time, I will make the question available for you to reply, depending of your involvement in the response. The first part will last 30 minutes, more or less, and I will try to give some orientation for the first part, which is really the challenges and the reality. Industry, you are there to try to innovate, to take over research and innovation, because it's European Research and Innovation Days today, and try to face the big challenge, which is really remain competitive, at the same time facing the famous challenge. You have barriers to face also, in terms of safety, in terms of noise requirements, in terms of taxation of fuel, in terms of environmental concerns, in terms of footprint, in terms, and 2050 is yesterday. 2050 is really now, if you look at the reality in terms of aviation construction. And for my first question to you, starting by Madame for sure, is, okay, what are your views? What do you think could be, is it possible to face this challenge? What is the role of innovation? Do you see the difficulties from your side? Please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Javier, for the welcome and for the introduction. And many thanks also to Jean-Éric for organizing these very vibrant R&I days. Dear co-panelists, dear members of our European Parliament, dear current and designated members of our European Commission, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I think we all have still vivid in our mind the images about a month ago of a fierce young lady of Viking heritage choosing to sail her way across the Atlantic on occasion of her first trip to the United States. I think this picture is very valid in the sense of giving us two key messages. First of all, there is a problem. Climate change is a reality, and we, the aviation industry, are under heavy public scrutiny. And second, well, there is no simple solution to the problem. Apologies, my mic is... Yes. Could you please switch on?
Turn it on.
I give you mine.
Thank you very much. So there is no easy solution, right? So the willingness to travel to the United States was stronger than the oceanic waves. And just booking a video conference instead was totally out of the question. And this is, for me, representative of the dilemma we are facing today as an industry overall. Because aviation has been connecting cultures and people. And this has become of such value to individuals and to the society that nobody is really willing to give up on it. And the number speaks for themselves. I mean, we have 130,000 commercial flights per day. We have every single instant 25,000 aircraft carrying 1 million passengers in the air. Take these numbers, double them every 15 years. So this is the reality. It is very significant, call it exponential growth of our sector. More people, more cultures get connected, which is fantastic, but twice as many aircraft also means twice as much noise, twice as much air traffic, emissions double as well. So how do we reconcile this pace of growth with the fact that we are living on a finite planet with limited resources? This is the main question and the main challenge, right? Where unfortunately sailing is not a sustainable way to transport the masses, and we don't want to give up on this. From aviation viewpoint, democratization of mobility, this has been our force, our strength in the past century and a half. So we must seek other solutions. It's a radical challenge requiring radical change, and we are firmly committed as an industry to go in this direction. Even though air traffic has been growing at the pace I mentioned, we manage keeping our global share of CO2 emissions below 2.5%. And we're going even beyond that. It's going to be next year, 2020. We're committed to capping carbon growth. Even beyond that, go to 2050, cutting noise, perceived noise by 65%, NOx emissions, 90%, CO2 emissions, 75%. That's an incredibly ambitious goal. If all other industry would take the same approach, well, we would be in a much better place today, and we could stop just investing, talking about sustainability, and look about how to implement restorative, regenerative technologies in our product. We're nowhere near that today. So it's ambitious goals. How do we tackle them? Well, from technology perspective, there is no single solution. It will most likely be down to a set of technologies we must combine, we must leverage on. Take electric, hydrogen, hybrid propulsion, take autonomy and connectivity, advanced materials, smart manufacturing and assembly, artificial intelligence and quantum computing. It's all technologies which we need to develop coherently and concurrently to enable us to grow exponentially, yes, but also sustainably. And this is why we strongly support Horizon Europe, because it's research initiatives like this which help bringing together technologies we need for true innovation in the field of air traffic management or clean aviation. This is why we welcome initiatives like this, the Research and Innovation Days, because this conference brings together all these experts who then need to work together, people from the political environment, from administration, from science, from business. But
the complexity of the challenge is such that we really need to take care as an industry, and this is really the message I want to pass, that we do not have an over-determined problem with more constraints than degrees of freedom, and with a very high likelihood of having no solution. It is of utmost importance for us as an industry to have the freedom to select the best possible partners in our future innovation projects. The higher the ambition, the higher the bar we set. And we need to work with the European best-in-class, with relevance and excellence as the only guiding principles for future partnerships. If we pursue this approach, the rewards will be great. Very tangibly, we could figure having already, in 10 years' time, a 100-seat regional airliner powered by hybrid propulsion. And we believe that Europe could really have a leadership position in this revolution if we just get our act together now. Because these are underlying technologies with significant benefits for society, for the environment, and with huge business momentum being generated around the globe. And we see it every day, new competitors coming in, the entry levels are lowering. We see United States and China heavily subsidizing aerospace technology in a real global race. And our greatest asset as Europe is also our greatest challenge. And that is the fantastic diversity at the roots of who we are in terms of countries, of cultures, of companies, of competencies. We must really align European institution, industry on common goals and ambitions, like we do in the framework of Horizon Europe. We must bring together and foster different technologies to reach these goals, like we do in complementary research initiatives like CESAR and Clean Aviation. And we must leverage the strengths of different industries and companies acting in complement, again, giving them the autonomy to choose the best possible partners in future innovation programs. And of course, we need to align all this, the various public and private programs on both national and European level in one overarching and coherent strategy. So democratizing mobility was definitely the biggest achievement of aviation so far. Decarbonizing mobility is our biggest challenge today, and it will remain the biggest challenge tomorrow. Accomplishing this in a profitable way will be a litmus test for European strength and competitiveness. We accept this challenge. We acknowledge our responsibility. We can do this, but we cannot do this alone. We need to work together. Industry, institution, governments, and European Union. Let us, Europe, take the global lead to shape tomorrow aviation for the benefit of our environment, of our society, and of our economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame Vittadini, for this point of view from a big company like ours. Thank you for the point of view of the assemblers of different parts of the plane. I would be keen now to turn to Monsieur Stéphane Cueil. He's a Senior Executive Vice President, Chief Technology Officer of Safran, to see the point of view of the motorization side of industry. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay, so I'm going to use slides if they are available. Okay, sorry. So I would like to go a bit more into the specifics of how we think at Safran we can achieve that top priority, which is to reduce the carbon footprint of aviation in spite of a very strong growth due to demand. Of course, I'm going to focus on CO2, but we need to bear in mind that we need also, in the same time, to keep on reducing other nuisances, noise, NOx, and particulates, for instance, and build a path which is actionable by the whole sector, which means affordable, incentivized, so that the big change can be actually implemented. So it's not just about technology. So to understand why our commitment, which is to reduce by 50% in 2050 the total emissions of aviation compared to 2005 is absolutely challenging, is when you take into account the growth, which you can see on the top line, you see that in fact that means that in 2050 the fleet must be around 90% more efficient than the fleet in 2005. And you cannot achieve that just by technology. In fact, you need to use a set of systemic measures. One is already granted, it's just to renew the fleet with the latest generation of aircraft, which have been the fruit of past research programs. And so with that, we are going to do 20% of the required gain. So we still have a big path to climb. Next is we can improve operations, and that's where there is a strong link with air traffic management. We could even go to the point where we reduce the speed of the fleet. It could have a big impact on CO2, but to be effective and pragmatically feasible, it requires a full change of the air traffic management system. Okay, so it's systemic change there. And then we need to find other technologies, being more ambitious, have breakthrough technologies. And finally, we can't make it without a change of the mix of primary energy. So moving to fuels that are sustainable in terms of CO2 or other types of a primary source, which are zero emission or low emission. So now we need to, as Grazia said, we need to understand that solutions may be different for different segments of aviation. And to understand that, you need to bear in mind that we have specific constraints, which are physical ones, so they are not negotiable. One is weight. Weight is the critical factor. So solutions applicable on the ground may not be applicable in flight without an order of magnitude of improvement of technologies. Okay? Safety is critical, and it's a big challenge because we need to be ambitious about new technologies. We need to change the way we certify it. We need to anticipate, otherwise it will take a decade to certify them. And finally, we have also high altitude, which changes some physical phenomena, typically for electricity. This graph, which is from DLR actually, shows that okay, the total emissions of the fleet is spread across various segments of flights. And typically, flights above 8,000 kilometers, they represent only 1% of flights. They are not substitutable, but it's 20% of CO2 emission. Clearly, for those flights, options like electrical storage is not going to be feasible for a large number of decades. So that means that we need to have specific solutions for longer flights. At the same time, we can have other options for very short-range flights and what we call regional or commuters, where electricity could be used in the short time. So, in fact, we will have, energy-wise, three main pillars. One is, for most of the fleet, we still have for quite a long time some thermal propulsion. So we need to improve it and step up our game to be more ambitious to deliver savings on the old aircraft with new types of propulsors. Second, low carbon fuels are mandatory. And we need to open the possibilities beyond biofuels, which is the short-term option and needs to be developed. We need to have public policies to incentivize the use of low carbon fuels. But also we need to look beyond H2, CH4, much more ambitious, much riskier, longer term. And finally, electrification is an option, maybe not for the bulk of commercial aviation very soon, but it's an option for the future. And we need to start with short-range, smaller aircraft now because it's feasible. So to come back to electricity, to illustrate my point, you see that there can be different applications of electrical, of hybrid aircraft, starting from very small power, like e-taxiing just on the ground, to commuters, a few hundred kilometers, 10 seats, or logistics with drones, and climbing up to regional hybrid, which could be feasible during the next program. But going beyond, battery density is the big problem. And for longer range flights, we see a barrier. We need to be ready, but we will need a revolution, which is possible in batteries energy density to make it possible. So we cannot bet on that single solution. We need to be ready for it if it happens. So how can we deliver the change which is needed? In fact, we need a mix of policies and technology. It's our job to show you what is feasible. It's the job of the public authorities to help us transition. So here we are in 2020. Already we have made an 80% fuel burn improvement compared to the first jets, commercial jets. We forget it, it's done, proud of it, but now a new story. What can we do in 2030, 2035? In 2030, 2035, we need to introduce much more efficient aircraft, be much more ambitious than what we were targeting in the current program. So ultra-efficient aircraft, which I call a skipper generation, so 30% or more improvement. So we'll see if we can deliver that, but it's what we have to target. It will be mostly thermal, and we will have to have massive use of alternative fuels. Okay. At the same time, we will introduce smaller electric aircraft or hybrid regional, and we will pave the way of new mobilities for electrical systems. Okay. There are stepping stones for the longer future. In the longer future, we will have not ultra-efficient, but hyper-efficient aircraft, plus a fully decarbonized energy source. We don't know yet what is the best option. It could be liquid H2. It's a massive step. It's not like on the ground. We need to have cryo, 20K temperature, tanks, heat exchanger, something completely different to what we do. It could be power to liquid, so synthetic fuel using renewables. You need CO2 capture to do it. It could be ultra-high density batteries if there is a revolution. We need to get prepared for that. What is key, though, is the energy source is not going to save us only, alone. Why? Because it will take energy. Renewable energy are not going to be unlimited. So we need to be extremely efficient. Those aircraft, they will be less efficient if we don't change anything than the current one, because kerosene is an optimum in terms of physics. So we have to compensate that by the efficiency of the aircraft. And so energy efficiency is still going to be top of the list, combined with disruptive solutions. And it's so risky that we need to start research now in next program Eurozone Europe. So to summarize, we are very motivated, as you can see. We are passionate about it because we believe in the value of what we do. We want to keep the leadership. We know that our responsibility is to solve the CO2 conundrum. But what it means is an unprecedented technological challenge and a systemic change for the whole sector, not just industry, but ATM, airlines. And in order to deliver that, we need a strong partnership between the public and private sectors. Why? Because we need to accelerate the demonstration, maturation of breakthrough technologies. We need to have a single roadmap shared with everybody for efficiency. We need to be flexible and agile, because some technologies will have to be down-selected down the line. We don't know the long term. We don't have no certainties. But we also need not only to deliver technologies for the partnership, but also give you the inputs about what makes sense in terms of public policies, what are the choices to be made for the transportation sector to make it happen. And finally, we are in a global market, global regulation. Europe needs to be taking the lead in influencing the future standards, and having a strong base for Horizon Europe will help to deliver that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Great. In order to complement the point of view of industrial partners, I will pass the floor to Mr. Marco Proti to see what are the views of Leonardo, who is leader in the field of rotating wings or vertical flying. And I would like to begin to see how to mitigate these challenges with the competitiveness of your industry. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the European Commission for this kind of invitation, and also the opportunity to share my view to with this community of friends, because most of them are people with which I spend several hours of my job. I want just to make a step back, because the capability of the aviation to increase its efficiency is not a new step for us. Because if you look back to the last 50 years, we have improved our efficiency, reducing by 90% our emission since 50 years ago. We have reduced 75% our noise. So we know what are the challenges associated to a big improvement in our efficiency in terms of system. Nevertheless, we are now facing a challenge that is probably make a disruption in our business, because the climate change, as some colleagues said yesterday, is not just an event, it's an emergency for the planet. We have the responsibility to take care of this in an appropriate way, take care inside the boundary of what aviation can do. Aviation is not working in isolation. Aviation is part of a mobility system, should be in a position to make its own contribution. And Leonardo, as an aircraft manufacturer of rotary and fixed wing, will do his job. But we need to have a systemic approach to the problem. We cannot imagine that we will create a new fantastic aircraft that does not produce any pollution, and this aircraft will go around in a current aviation system, in a current mobility system. We need to be sure that whatever solution we envisage, and as my colleague said before, the challenge have not in front a clear roadmap. We have a spread of options. Some of them probably will be combined at the end, and the risk that we are facing from the industrial point of view is huge, because we are not working alone. We are in a high competitive scenario in which the sensitivity is not the same with respect to this problem, but is exactly the same in terms of the capability to sell products that are cost-effective and deliver to the airlines the appropriate services and to the customer a high-quality experience when they fly. So we have more or less a very complex scenario to deal with. We are ready to do that, but we need to be conscious that even if when we talk about the class of product, class of services that are delivered by Leonardo, that is typical this short-range air mobility. Even in this sector, the competition is there and is ready to react. It's clear that we have an opportunity, the opportunity to be a first runner, because we have a community since the political point of view going down to each of the actors that are sensible to the problem, that are ready to put them in the game. And the short range, as my colleague said, is probably a stepping stone in maturing the solution. Is not capable alone to address this complex scenario, but can really contribute to down-select the most promising, to also test what is the implication to have in service the new class of system. This should not be underestimated, the complexity to change, for example, airport infrastructure. We know what is the Caesar effort to improve the air traffic management, and we imagine what could be if we find that the solution is an aircraft that have a different performance profile compared to the current one. We multiply the complexity of the air traffic management. And the last but not less important is about MRO, because our product need to be properly maintained, because we have a track record on safety that we don't want at all to compromise. So we need to find a solution of the equation in which the decarbonization needs to be combined with the competitiveness, with the safety. And it's not an easy solution behind the corner. So we need to collect the best technology partners on board, because only with the best capability we can really embark in a long-term roadmap, because we cannot take the risk that we have somebody on board that at the first problem that we encounter say, no, it's not for me. Because this is not, it's only for brave, as I said. It's not business as usual. And this should not be underestimated, because sometimes it seems that, okay, aviation as usually is looking for budget, is looking for opportunity. We now recognize the challenge, we now accept to face this challenge, but we need the system behind that support ourselves. In doing that, of course, the capability to share the roadmap, to share the goal with the institution, as I said before, Grazia, is a key point. We cannot imagine to embark alone without the member state, without the commission aside. Whatever will be the regulation, will be the process. The process is not the goal. The goal is what we said before. Now we have to discuss together to find a way in which we can really create a consensus in our aviation community to embark in this direction, to take the risk, but to find a solution. The time frame is not in our side, because, as I said, the climate is moving very fast. So we need to deliver solution in a stepped approach. As I said before, Stefan, we cannot probably be capable to go directly to the best solution. We need to find interim steps. And these interim steps could imply sustainable fuel, could imply optimization of the routing of the aircraft, because this is a point that is not so much popular, but is one of the ways in which we can improve the global impact. And then, of course, we have a more disruptive solution in front of us, in which, as Stefan said, it's not just the propulsion system, but the full aircraft that need to be redesigned in order to cope with the goal that we have in front. So this is our view as Leonardo, and we are part of the big discussion that is ongoing in this month, ready to do our contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to underline the commitment from the industrial sector to achieve this ambitious target. Understand that we have to build up a community together, to work together. And we will embark on that, because we have the huge challenge of Horizon Europe under negotiation. We have the forthcoming joint undertakings, partnerships with industry. Let's see how we can make the best of it. And you know, these research and innovation days are part of knowledge base for policy, and we need input, really. I turn now to the research and innovation sector, and I will turn to the invitees around the table, and I will see, we talk about accelerating promising solutions to achieve the targets. My question is, are these promising solutions there? Can we accelerate n'importe quoi? Can we choose? And which orientation we should give to the next round of research and innovation at EU level in the framework of the Horizon Europe program? I turn first to mein deutschen Nachbar, der wahrscheinlich auf Englisch sprechen wird.
I'll try to.
Yeah, Mr. Kindler, Head of Aeronautics Program Strategy Unit at the German Aerospace Center, DLR. The floor is yours. Please help us.
I'll try to avoid answering your question, actually, because there were so many interesting points being raised over here. So for me to try to make 3 points before coming back to your question, I think we want to talk about vision. We have to talk a bit about mindset, and then maybe I'll come to your question. From what we discussed, you were mentioning Greta Thunberg, for example. I had the impression that the vision that Flight Path 2050 had given to us before the Paris Agreement served us very well, but now it has become a bit fluid, let's say. We have to go back to the drawing board and be a bit more precise how we fulfill the demands of the Paris Agreement, keeping any kind of global warming below 2 degrees. So when we accept this, then things are maybe complicated, but not complex any longer, because there's a structure, an inner logic that falls into place then. So for example, coming back to growth. Growth is something that has something to do with price, and this will turn into an interesting regulating factor. As you know, last week Germany decided to put 10 euros on each and every ton of CO2 that is emitted, and that will have effects on how this growth will really look like in the future. So to put it boldly, sorry for that, maybe we enter into a position where aviation has to earn the growth that we are expecting, that we assume to be permanent for quite some time. And maybe that puts us in a position to even reinforce any kind of activities that we are capable of throwing into this. You were mentioning best of class, and I really do like the phrase, but I would add all hands on deck. I think we're now in times where thinking about the time to come until 2050. So for example, think about any technology that is at TRL 6 by 2030. And it'll be there and it can be industrialized. So it'll take some years, then we have to, or you actually, industry has to turn it into a product to sell it, and it has to be taken up by the market. So all of this takes time. And to really overturn the global fleet, to make it emission-free, and that's pretty much what we're looking at in 2050, could be turned into, say, a perception of maybe this is just one big shot that is left for us to have, and maybe that's a little bit like a moonshot. You know, maybe we're living in interesting times. Maybe we should be happy about it, and maybe it should feel like Kennedy saying, "Okay, we're doing this because it's hard, and we're going to do it." So that's pretty much the vision and the mindset part of things. The third one was.
My point was, are the technologies there ready to be cooked, to accelerate, to achieve, and to support industrial efforts to move toward in terms of motorization, aerodynamics, fuels, whatever?
I think most of them are. I think it's more a matter of mindset to really pick up on things that we already know about and maybe we haven't been pursuing as intensively as we should have. I guess there's no other big idea really needed to get close, let's say. Maybe we're not going to achieve everything at once, but I guess we have a pretty good idea of what to do.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I turn now to the next speaker. Perhaps someone would like to take the floor to react to what has been said, or do I follow the... Chers collègues français, allez-y. Un microphone est à votre disposition.
Maybe I can have the slides for support my speech. Yeah. Maybe I will start with reminding and saying with different words what was already said before by some of the speakers. We are here to talk about how to reduce the environmental impact of aviation. This has been a concern since the beginning of aviation, and if you look at the numbers, maybe these ones are slightly different from what you were saying, but I mean the idea is here. We have already succeeded in reducing the fuel consumption since 50 years by 70% and reduce the noise by a factor of 4 and so on and so forth. Yet, we are here. So this means that there are things new, there are new things that are happening. And I think that there are two main points. The first one is that there is a tremendous growth of the traffic, a factor of 10 for the last 50 years. So this means, and this has been clearly underlined by the conclusions of the technology evaluators of Clean Sky and Clean Sky 2, that the technologies can no longer compensate in terms of emissions for the traffic growth. So this is the first point. Second one is, of course, that we are facing a climate urgency, and together with this urgency, there is a strong societal pressure. So this means, in conclusion, that we have to do new things, we have to imagine radical solutions, and we have to do it fast, or let's say to start as soon as possible and to do it fast. So what are the solutions? What do we want to do? Well, what we would like to do is to reverse this ever-growing trend of the emissions of CO2 on this diagram that all of you know very well. And to do this, I fully agree with what Grazia was saying. There's no single solution. It will be a combination of solutions. So we need to imagine disruptive technologies for the ATM, to green the operations, the ground operations, maybe think of green trajectories, maybe review the adaptation of the fleet to the missions. So this is one point. We need, of course, to imagine revolutionary aircraft configurations with much better integrated propulsive systems. We have some ideas such as distributed propulsion, such as boundary layer injections and things like that. And last, but maybe the most important efforts have to be put in the technologies that will fill this green part of the graphic here, which means the new sources of energy. And here I can only concur with what was said before. There are several options which all together, and depending on the segment of aircraft we are talking about, will contribute to this reduction. So there is sustainable alternative fuels, non-drop-in fuels. Hydrogen could be a solution, but what we are talking about a cryogenic engine, so a lot of research work to be done. And of course, the electrification of aviation for full electric aircraft or hybrid electric aircraft. My second point here is that we want to accelerate the introduction of the technologies and the innovations into for this technology transition. And I believe we have strong accelerators, what I would call accelerators, to achieve this. Some of them are listed here: numerical methods, physics-based methods, more advanced methods from the very beginning of, let's say, pre-design studies. Digitalization is, of course, very important all along the cycle. Making a smarter use of experimental and numerical methods. And last but not least, maybe safety and certification by design, which means taking into account the safety and certification issues as soon as possible when developing our solutions. To conclude, I would like to give an example of a success story, national one, let's say, or let's say a French-German one from the past, and draw some conclusions from this experience. This is the Blue Edge story. You know, this highly performant, low-noise helicopter main rotor. It started in the 90s, where DLR and Onera studied some advanced blade shape and made explorations of different concepts. Then there was a maturation phase where research establishments performed some wind tunnel tests for proof of the design. During these first phases, industry was part of the projects, let's say more or less as observers. Anyway, they were in, okay, Airbus helicopter, now Airbus helicopter, at that time Eurocopter was there. Then they took the lead because they were very interested in the results. And there were other projects, they integrated these technologies in one of their demonstrators, they made the demonstrations, and now they're going to certify the H160 with this concept. So what are the lessons from this? The lessons is that we have been able to have at the national levels different projects to progress in the TRL scale from exploration to maturation to integration and demonstration of the technologies. And with industry and research establishments together all along this story. The transposition of this national example at the European level can be easily made. We have, I believe, I'm convinced, all the tools from the previous framework programs or from the ongoing one. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3 projects, and I'm convinced that if we all work together, we can really make it. So, to conclude, believe me, like industry, the research establishments and the research community nowadays, today, is more than ever fully committed for the decarbonization of aviation, or more generally to develop a clean and seamless air transport.
Thank you very much.
If I may have a quick comment, I think that's a brilliant illustration of the table is really all set up with all the ideas are there. So maybe the question should be, how do we organize a common view on prioritizing what we're going to do? I think we have seen now a shift from classical technologies to energy vectors, which is all natural now that we're talking about fulfilling the Paris Agreement, and maybe that's the spin that you want to pick up on in your statement.
Yes, I give you the microphone. I just want to add a sentence. Time is running for everybody. One short, because I need to extract from the discussion useful things for Horizon Europe negotiation. Horizon Europe now to be considered as an accelerator of good technologies, or continue research and innovation, collaborative research, pre-commercial research, or both?
Before I answer, I want to stress one thing. Sometimes I have the feeling that we don't grasp what it means that we have an exponential growth. If we grow 4.5% a year, then gaining 10% in efficiency gains you 2 years. And if you continue like this with all the things we have in mind, we will not see half the CO2 emission, which is, by the way, only half the problem we are facing. But it will be 3 times as much at the speed at what we are doing things right now. So a radical change has to be done. And what we should do differently, actually the development cycle should be closer. I think it's very important also for the next European project that there is a collaboration top-down and bottom-up, so that research in organizations are very much involved in what's going on in industry. And keep involvement there. I think that's very important. But we also should reach out to other areas. We should look at what's happening in automotive industry. We should look at what's happening in the chemical industry, because half the solution will have to be found in replacement of fossil fuels we are using right now. So it's extremely important that we realize programs where we can reach out across disciplines, where we can reach out across nations and across programs, nationally and internationally. And I think there should be a means that national programs could be co-funded, for instance, by Europe. And I know it's difficult, but it could be really helpful if there is an incentive for parties to collaborate. Because like Grazia said, we need the brightest minds to work on this. In my opinion, we are in the same situation that the world was in aviation at early 1900s. Before the Wright brothers flew, nobody thought we could fly. We are in the same situation now. We have to radically change aviation. The only difference is now it's not a bicycle maker who can do it. We all have to do it together, and we have to do it fast because we don't have any time left.
Miguel, some reaction to all the very animated discussion, please. Give us our views. Which orientation to give collaborative research, collaboration between programs, national, regional, local, EU? How does it work? What to do?
I would like to give you the recipe, just like a prescription, but unfortunately, I can say what I think it can work based on what has been working in the past and what are the more promising, let's say, collaboration for the future. Well, first of all, we need to use the importance of being a community at European level. It's very obvious, but if we want to be, let's say, partnering with the best, we need to widen the competition as much as we can across the value chain. So we will partner with our customers to understand what are going to be the demands. We are going to partner with our competitors We are going to partner with the university, with the technology centers, all together with the help of the support and the skeleton of the Commission, the national funding programs. We will be able to cope with the demands coming both from our customers and the society in the demands of decarbonization, etc. So first of all, to put in value that. Second, we have to have impact. And to have impact, well, I am an industrial member of the value chain. So we need to put together the technologies that make, let's say, the return of investment into the market, to make it feasible. So it's not only technology readiness level, in our case it's manufacturing readiness level. So in that, we can cross-cut with initiatives on Industry 4.0, for example, digitalization, to reduce our, let's say, cost basis and make the new technologies available and return the investment into the market. So again, I don't have the recipe. I think that can work. It has been working in the past. And that's all that I can say in such a short time frame.
Thank you very much. I'm happy we've kept the timing, except if you take the floor too long now.
I was just going to add that Stefan was providing at least part of the answer to how to streamline these things and how to get to really get organized and get quick and accelerate what we do. And you could call it a single roadmap, I think. And this is pretty much what I meant when there's one vision, then we have a common set of priorities, and then there's a single roadmap. And that's pretty much the key also to involving member states, I guess.
Yes, sure. Have we time to take a few questions from the floor? We have 7 minutes remaining. Questions from the floor, and someone to take the microphone to the floor. Thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon. Nice to see you. I'm Luís Oliveira from TAPR Portugal. One thing I'd like to acknowledge from Mr. Prati, that you acknowledge the role that MROs will have in supporting the new generation aircraft. Just to give you one highlight from people who use aircraft, nowadays the typical single-aisle aircraft, like an A320, has a turnaround time of around 40 minutes, 45 minutes in operations. If we take into account the time to disembark and embark passengers, refuel, etc., this means that we have around 15 to 20 minutes to do maintenance on an aircraft, should that be necessary. So I would expect to see more involvement of MROs in the future programs, because you can have this very clean aircraft, this very new disruptive ATM system, and it all fails because every time we have a problem on the aircraft, we will have delays that will impact the whole chain. Recently in Clean Sky 2, we had, in a 4 billion euros program, we had shortly below 10 million for maintenance. So I'm expecting to see more in the future programs.
It's a very pertinent point.
Yeah.
I thought I fixed my mic, but it's a very pertinent point, not only for future programs, but also for current, for legacy programs, right? Where we see more and more the importance of data. We see the industry turning really from the typical nuts and bolts business, even from the MRO viewpoint, into a data-driven type of industry, where we are really investing a lot in making sure that we analyze and turn into actionable information the wealth of data, the parameters on board our aircraft currently capture. An A350 has 250,000 sensors currently on board, and really drawing intelligent and operable information out of that for predictive maintenance to support absolutely optimizing also the variable of MRO in the equation, end-to-end equation of life cycle of an aircraft is of fundamental importance, but not only for new products. So.
Yeah, sorry, good afternoon. I'm standing in the spotlight, so probably that's interesting. So Yuri Dreuter from company Honeywell, actually, but my question is more out of a personal interest as an aviator. When you look into reports also from Eurostat and also the earlier this year published the European Aviation Environmental Report. It says that the average flight length or flight distance in Europe is about 1,712 kilometers. When we think of Horizon Europe needing to deliver impact what we do, and also as the panel said, for every platform, for every flight, there's a different solution necessary. Should we also build our program for Horizon 2020, particularly when thinking of clean aviation, around that number of flight ranges? Or should we really go full stretch to the 10,000 kilometers type of things?
You can.
I think we need to look at the global traffic because, okay, there are measures we can take to optimize the footprint in Europe, but the ambition we have is through Europe to have an impact on the global CO2 emissions of the fleet. And so, as you could see, longer range flights have a big impact. So not dealing with the long range flights is probably a big gap if we make that choice. So in my opinion, we need, unfortunately, we have to cover the full spectrum of big contributor to CO2 emissions.
But let's go where the impact is, and that's in the middle of the market and long range.
Okay, we reached the end of the session, but I would be keen to give the floor, Madame first, to give perhaps one sentence recommendation in order to wrap up and for us to extract from this excellent session things for the future. Madame, please.
Again, I think it's a matter of leveraging on the strengths of Europe, which are also our biggest challenge, going beyond national interests, fighting together for something which we know is the greater good. We have the framework, we have the joint undertakings, we have the enabling frames, and again, it will be of fundamental importance for us to be able, as an industry, to choose the best possible partners to tackle this huge challenge together. Thank you.
For me, the key point is to have the right approach to the challenge, so not to have a very rigid framework against which we have to explore for the solution, but to be flexible in the building of the problem-solving approach, because we are approaching a disruptive boundary of our technology, and we are not in a position now to select, to pick up the single solution as the good ones. We need to spend a few years to down-select, and this down-selection assume flexibility in the program.
I think you could hear that we have the best industry in the world. We have the best research centers, the best minds. So it's how we team together and align our efforts toward the impact. So I concur with what Marco said. We need really to be driven by the impact, and the solution is a conclusion to deliver the impact. So we need to build the flexibility to find the right options and align everybody to deliver on the right target. And if we can do that, we'll succeed.
What I want to add, besides making it possible to collaborate, which I think is really very important, I think it's also important to think how the projects are being managed. That we have specific programs actually targeting the middle segment and the long haul separately, but think about how the teams are working. We all have to work together, but that's not the same as being one huge team, because then things become slow. Make sure that you have modules or whatever where people in a fairly small, let's say, relative small number of partners are working on topics which later on are combined, but make sure that the collaboration can be possible.
Maybe I will not give any recommendation, but just share with you a concern I had this morning when attending a session on biomass. And the question was a very general one and an important one. Do we have enough biomass for all the needs of humanity? and the answer was yes, but there were two if. And one of the two if was provided that we need less biofuels. So just be careful. Okay, anyway, this is food for thought. I would say that, yeah, the most important is cooperation, smart cooperation, and I'm sure it's a question of mindset, and we all have this mindset now at the European level.
Be good.
Okay.
Be good.
Well, before Kolia can again say that maybe the growth is not a good idea. Well, we at the end we're industrials, we're business. Business needs growth, and it's our demand to enable that. Otherwise, the beautiful of the dynamics of the market, the growth will not be there, and then our sector will not be attractive. So, I feel the responsibility, being an industrial, being in business, to make our case appealing and grow.
I didn't say that I didn't believe in growth something bad. It has to be earned by being advanced or advanced quick enough. And I guess that leads me to one of the phrases I saw on one of the slides. There's this beautiful phrase of skipping a generation. If you want to skip a generation, the time would be now. So it would be a good moment to bring together the best and brightest. And I guess it will require some fair monitoring work in terms of assessing, evaluating, and having a good and common view on how quickly we can advance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Warm thank you to all of you for your participation first, your contribution. We will do the best. We'll try to do the best of it. But also, I think one conclusion is let's work together, because I think we need that to achieve these challenges. Thank you again. Thank you.